I've traveled nonstop for the last 2 years, and during that time, I've been to over 25 countries. I've moved apartments 15 times. All of my belongings are in 2 backpacks and 2 suitcases. I would only have one, but I need one for the Canadian winter. Additionally, I spent my summers in Europe, my winters in South America, and I'm about to head to Spain for my birthday after I spend Canada Day in Scotland. And in this video, I want to talk about my experience over the last 2 years being like a permanently nomadic person, pros and cons of this lifestyle. Is it worth it? Should you give it a try? And is this lifestyle for everyone? So without further ado, let's just get into the video. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. My name is Alex, and on this channel I cover everything that is focused around the travel lifestyle while staying in shape, eating good food, trying new things, kind of all around the world. If that sounds interesting, feel free to check out some of the other videos down below. And again, in this video, I want to talk about my experiences being permanently nomadic over the last 2 years. For reference, typically I am Canadian based here in Toronto, Ontario. I do spend some time in Northern Ontario at my family's house as well, and that's really where all of my stuff is. Kind of quick backstory here. In January of 2022, when kind of the rest of the world was starting to open back up after COVID, Toronto, they decided to, let's do another lockdown. January 2022, full shutdown of every industry, barbers, gyms, restaurants, everything was shut for January 2022. And at the time, I had just met one of my good friends through work, and he was Colombian. And he was actually heading back to Medellin to get away from A, the Toronto lockdowns, B, the Toronto winter, and C, just enjoy some good food and a change of scenery and get some new inspiration. And when he was telling me about the trip, I was like, you know what, this sounds pretty awesome. At the time, I was paying very, very little rent. I had a really good deal post-graduation from university, and I was still in that apartment. And I was like, you know what, I am depressed, I am lonely, I've been stuck in Toronto for 2 years, I really just need a break. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna go to Medellin, Colombia. And we ended up staying there for a few months, and it was absolutely incredible, and really my first sort of exposure into this lifestyle of traveling and changing locations and staying in hostels and being like a permanent nomad. So after Colombia, I said to myself, you know what, this is an amazing life. I feel fulfilled, I feel inspired, I wanted to do cool things, I was meeting new people, I was getting out of my comfort zone. This was my first exposure to learning Spanish. I was cooking at home, I was just doing interesting things. And then when I came back from that trip, just talking to my friends and just meeting new people, they're like, you just went to Colombia for a few months? Like it was really like a mind-blowing sort of revelation that not a lot of people have the fortunate ability to do this, and I'm definitely grateful for it. And it also makes you just like a super interesting person and a lot of interesting things to talk about. So let's talk about the pros and cons kind of out the gate here. I think probably the best thing about it is it really changes your perspective on the rest of the world and seeing new places, seeing new people, seeing different cultures, different holidays, different languages, different food scenes, different etiquette. It really kind of puts your mind into a perspective of how big the world is. I think there just globally kind of is a lot of shelteredness around how other people behave, and it kind of feels like if it's not normal for me, it's not right. And I get the logic behind that, and I used to feel that way, and I still feel that way about some things. But at the same time, once you go to see that, for instance, like people drive on the other side of the road and their car steering columns are on the other side of the car, or people just by default speak a different language, or when you're in the grocery store, nothing is written in your normal language, the prices are in a foreign currency, then people's etiquette around things like plastic bags, they don't use them, they only use recycled bags. There's just like a lot of sort of foundational differences between all these places, and I think it really kind of expands your horizons, opens up your mind to new possibilities, and realizes just how big our world really is. And at heart, we are explorers. This is what we've been doing kind of since the dawn of time, is going out and seeing what else is out there. So I think if you do have the ability to do so, this should be something you're doing. And if you don't have the ability to do so, I would say, find a way to do it through like budgeting and planning and saving money, because truthfully, like even a 6-month trip around the world, or 6 months in Europe, or 6 months in Southeast Asia, it is a lot of money, granted, but the amount of value you get from that will ripple in every aspect of your life after that trip and make you just a more deep, more cognitively aware person about the things going on around you. Second pro, I think, is just interesting people do interesting things. Now that I've been doing this for so long, and I have kind of cool stories and memories, and like even things like Google lists of restaurants to go to in these cities. When you meet new people, or even when you're meeting old people and they're going to places you've been, you have such like a compelling narrative to tell, and you can spin these stories of, like, for instance, when I was in Santa Marta, Colombia, we took a bus 2 hours into the jungle to El Rio Hostel, and we rode kayaks down the Amazon, and we rope swung off of bridges into the Amazon, into these rivers. It was like, it's something out of a fairy tale that a lot of people wish they could do. But when you're talking about that and you have that experience, it's like, it gives you a kind of big picture outlook on the little sort of mundane things in our life actually don't matter that much. Like when you stub your toe, or maybe something sold out of the grocery store, like these little sort of annoyances that get you throughout the day, you kind of just, I think now I instinctively like zoom out and take a step back and be like, it's not that big a deal. There's a lot going on in the world, and my little problems that happen on a day in, day out basis, although they only happen to me, really aren't that big of a deal in the grand scheme. And then following up with that, I think like just getting unstuck. A lot of people get into their careers, stay in the same company for like 5, 10, 15 years, maybe not for like millennials and Gen Z, but historically they did. And when you're like stuck in that same mindset of repeating the same thing day in, day out, it gets annoying, it gets depressing, it gets unexciting. Like, people want to be doing things on a daily basis that get them fired up to wake up. You wake up on the right side of the bed, but you're in Patagonia, Argentina, and you get to go hike a mountain today, probably gonna be feeling pretty good. So I think like changing your perspective and changing your surroundings is such an incredible tool to just like unlocking new potential of your ability. The third thing is particularly relevant for my fellow Canadians or anyone from a colder climate, or even someone who doesn't like the warmer climates. Can't really relate. Seasonal depression. Like, I know people who based in like Miami, let's say, or like southern states, who just get overwhelmed with the heat when it gets like over 100 or close to 40 degrees Celsius. It's really, really hot. And people are like, I don't like this. I don't like being outside. This doesn't let me live my best life. I don't feel my best self. I'm sweaty. I'm gross. I need to go somewhere cooler for a few months and just kind of decompress. On the flip side, us Canadians, I really, really get depressed in the winter. Nobody goes outside. No really events happen. I'm not like a skier or snowboarder, so I'm not really enjoying the winter sports. Sure, I can skate like every Canadian can, but I don't really enjoy it. I don't like being cold. I don't like being wet. So if I'm able to enjoy the beautiful summer months here in Toronto, and then also just like hop on a flight and head out as soon as it gets cold down to somewhere else that's warm, if I can find year-round summer, that is just going to make me a more happy, a more enjoyable person to be around. And then that just kind of, again, trickles down into every element of my life. The fourth pro that really jumped out when I was thinking about this is, personally just gives me like a reason or an energy, like, something to strive for on my day-to-day basis. And I'm sure, again, kind of like to reiterate, people can relate when you're just doing the same thing, same thing day out, day in, day out. You're getting your paycheck, you're eating dinner, maybe you go out once a week, you're excited for like date night, or you're excited maybe for like the hockey game or like the basketball game or the football game on Sundays. But really, you don't really have a purpose or a big sort of idea that you're like, I want to do this. How do I get there? And I've found, for me, I struggled really developing that purpose throughout my life. I've had a hard time finding something that I wanted to strive for. So when I figured out that, hey, you know what, I can work towards that big trip I've been working on. I can work towards spending that money on a big flight that I want to go somewhere. It gave me like that will to keep going and find creative ways to feel energized and feel refreshed in my daily life. Now, it's not all sunshine and daisies, as we are aware, so let's talk about some of the cons. Number one, it is lonely for the most part. If you are not someone who can be self-sufficient, self-reliant, entertain yourself throughout the day, maybe you get stressed at airports by yourself, or maybe you're like a sidekick type energy where your partner or whoever you're traveling with takes care of the passports, takes care of the boarding passes, takes care of the Ubers, and you've never been that person who has to figure it out on your own. It can definitely be challenging, it can be lonely, it can be stressful when you're doing this all by yourself, and most of the time you are by yourself. Even if you're staying in hostels, even if you're doing like backpacking, a lot of the actual hard work that goes into travel, you're gonna be by yourself doing it. And that can be scary for some people. It's intimidating, it can be nerve-wracking, and it can make you not wanna do the trip at all. Number two, it can be expensive. I've gotten pretty good, I'd like to think, at doing this whole travel permanently thing, and I'm able to find like budget flights and find good deals on hotels or hostels or Airbnbs or apartments. And I'm good at budgeting, and I have pretty decent financial responsibility. So I've gotten better at it. But at the beginning, that first month when we were in Colombia, we were spending like we had nothing to go back to. Every day we were eating out most meals. We were drinking out 7 nights a week. We were going to clubs and bars we had no rights being in. We were taking weekend trips to the coast, to Cartagena, and like renting boats. And like, you know, we were spending like we could not run out of money. And it's really easy to fall into that trap if you let yourself get ahead of where you are. You know, people look at Instagram and they see these dream lives. And the reality is a lot of people are doing this on debt. A lot of people are doing this through like scamming, selling courses. A lot of people are just like being like a sugar baby and having someone else pay for these things. It's what you see on Instagram is not real life. And people who are doing this in the long term, they've gotten good at it and they've likely mastered how to budget for it. Otherwise, you just wouldn't be able to keep this lifestyle up. Now, with that being said, I think I've actually ended up saving money in the long run because I try to go and plan my trips and my lifestyle to be cheaper than it would have if I had just stayed in a high cost of living city like Toronto, where the rent is, you know, $2,500, $3,000 a month, on top of the atrocious grocery charges, you know, eating out. Everyone who's from here, you know what I mean. High cost of living cities, New York, LA, San Francisco, wherever you are, it's really easy to spend a lot of money at home. So I actually find I'm saving money when I'm not at home. And the third con, actually, I think that's really important for people to understand is you will miss important life events. My niece is 4 years old. I've missed I think 3 of her birthdays. I've been lucky enough to see her at most Christmases, and like whenever I am home, I try to go like her dance recitals and things like that. But the reality is I've missed a lot of her life, and that is just kind of like the unfortunate side effect and consequence of living this sort of lifestyle. It is, you know, it's kind of a prioritizing yourself now over prioritizing yourself later is the approach that most people take. They're not banking on retirement. They're not banking on their 50s or 60s being like their travel days. People are traveling now when they have the time, when their body and their mind are of sane health, and you're able to do it now, and you have the energy to want to do it. Like the way I travel now, there's absolutely no way I could do this when I get to an older age. Like recently when I came home from Croatia, I flew from Croatia to Copenhagen layover, Copenhagen to Iceland layover, Iceland to Toronto. Took me like 28 hours. I was in economy the whole time. I was sleeping on my backpack in the airport in between flights. Like it was tough. And if I was 50 or 60 years old or 70 years old, like my body would just simply not be able to do it. And I wouldn't enjoy it. Like it's not, for me, this was fun. Like doing something crazy like that and having a good story to tell, it was fun. But when I get to my older age, I'm not gonna be able to do that. The fourth and final thing I'd like to say about the cons is you're not gonna have the comforts of home. You're not gonna have that big comfy bed that you bought the bamboo sheets and like your fancy pillows and your like, I don't know, your humidifier and your big TV and things like this. You're not gonna have them because you really just don't have the space. You're traveling with your clothes, maybe your electronics, and that's pretty much it. So you downsize like everything. I don't have any furniture right now. If I do need to buy something for these apartments, typically it's like maybe a frying pan, maybe a chef's knife, maybe some plates, some spices, seasoning, things like that. But really anything that would stay with you is purely like clothes, shoes, electronics. That's essentially everything I travel with. So if you are someone who can't survive without all the luxuries of home, like a very large, I don't know, skincare routine or very large like shoe collection, things like this. Like I travel pretty much like 3 pairs of shoes. That's it. Flip-flops, gym shoes, maybe like Converse for going out. That's it. So with all this being said, is it worth it? Do you even like bother trying to do this? I would say there's no better thing I've done in my life than choosing this lifestyle. I simply wouldn't be the person I am today without it. Anytime I meet someone for like a job interview or a date or like family and friends, like I just have such cool things to talk about because I've been through so much, and it's made me such a resilient person, from like sleeping in the airport like I just said there, to getting COVID and chipping my tooth when I was in Argentina, to getting a bacterial infection in my mouth and nose when I was in Croatia and spending my birthday in the hospital, to being so hungover in Lima, Peru that I barely could make it to the airport to make my flight. Like these things, these things that I've been through at this point just really make it an exciting life, and I'm proud and grateful for the things I've been through to get to where I am today. Should you try it? You know, this video is about you if you're watching this. Yes, if you are someone who is, if you are tired, if you are unmotivated, if you're bored, if you're burnt out, if you're depressed, if you're going through a breakup, if you're going through divorce, if you're going through any sort of trauma, like I think this sort of thing puts you outside of your comfort zone. It makes you grow as a person. You'll see a side of you that you maybe didn't know you were capable of. You'll do things you didn't think were possible. You meet new people and you'll try new foods, and it just really like opens you up as a person. And overall, I think if more people did this, the world would truly just be a better place. So that's gonna be the video. Hopefully this was useful. If it was, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. As always, my name's Alex. Welcome back to Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.